On a freezing, moonlit night along a desolate stretch of Route 112 in New Hampshire, a shattered Saturn sedan sat abandoned against a snowbank. The date was February 9th, 2004. Inside the locked vehicle, airbags were deployed, and a box of wine had spilled across the interior, but the driver was nowhere to be found. In the span of roughly 7 minutes between a neighbor's emergency call and the arrival of law enforcement, 21-year-old nursing student Maura Murray vanished into the frigid darkness. How does a young woman evaporate from a rural highway without leaving a single footprint in the fresh snow? Before the twisted metal and the enduring cold case, Maura was a young woman defined by high expectations and relentless drive. A standout track athlete from Massachusetts, she had initially attended the prestigious United States Military Academy at West Point before transferring to the University of Massachusetts Amherst to pursue nursing. Friends and family knew her as fiercely intelligent and fiercely independent. Yet beneath the polished exterior of a high-achieving collegiate athlete, the pressures of early adulthood were seemingly beginning to fracture her carefully constructed world. The days immediately preceding the disappearance presented a baffling sequence of anomalies that investigators would later struggle to decipher. On the afternoon of her vanishing, Maura emailed her professors and employers claiming she would be absent for a week due to a death in the family. According to official police reports and university officials, no such family emergency existed. She then emptied her bank account of $280, purchased a significant quantity of alcohol, and packed her dorm room into neatly organized boxes, leaving a printed email concerning relationship troubles resting on top. This cascade of peculiar decisions established a complex psychological baseline for detectives to navigate. Was this the methodical preparation of someone intending to start a new life, or the erratic behavior of a young woman overwhelmed by a temporary crisis? Law enforcement had to separate the established facts of her departure from the speculative theories surrounding her state of mind. The physical evidence, including the packed boxes, the withdrawn cash, and the fabricated excuse, suggested premeditation, yet the ultimate destination of her impromptu road trip remained entirely unknown. The journey abruptly ended near the town of Haverhill, New Hampshire, a rugged and isolated community nestled within the White Mountains. At approximately 7:27 in the evening, a local resident heard a loud thud and looked out to see the dark Saturn angled into the eastbound lane of Route 112 facing the wrong direction. The collision with the roadside trees had damaged the front driver's side, rendering the vehicle completely inoperable. The temperature was hovering in the low 20s, and the dense, unforgiving woods loomed on all sides of the narrow asphalt ribbon. The most critical interaction in the entire timeline occurred mere minutes after the crash. A school bus driver returning to his nearby home spotted the disabled car and pulled alongside it. According to his sworn statements to law enforcement, he spoke directly to Maura, offering to call for help. She pleaded with him not to contact the authorities, claiming she had already called a roadside assistance service. Knowing that cellular service was virtually non-existent in that specific mountainous corridor, the driver wisely proceeded to his residence to contact emergency services anyway. That brief exchange would be the last confirmed sighting of the missing student. When the first Haverhill police officer arrived on the scene at 7:46 in the evening, the Saturn was locked and empty. The rapid response time created an extraordinarily narrow window for an abduction, a rescue, or an escape. Investigators define this critical period as the golden hour, the immediate aftermath of an incident where the preservation of evidence and the deployment of resources are paramount to a successful resolution. Yet the initial response was hindered by a tragic miscalculation. Operating under the assumption that the driver had simply fled the scene to avoid a driving under the influence charge, authorities treated the incident primarily as an abandoned vehicle rather than a critical missing persons situation. The spilled wine in the cabin heavily influenced this early theory. Consequently, a massive coordinated search of the immediate woodlands was not launched that first night. The jurisdictional boundaries between local police and state authorities further fragmented the early hours of the investigation, allowing precious time to slip away into the freezing night. By the time daylight broke and the severity of the situation became undeniable, the physical trail had already gone cold. Search teams, including tracking dogs and helicopters equipped with thermal imaging, scoured the dense forests flanking Route 112. The most perplexing detail to emerge from these exhaustive efforts was the absolute absence of footprints in the surrounding snowbanks. If she had wandered into the woods in a disoriented state, she would have left a physical disturbance. The tracking dogs followed her scent from the car for roughly 100 feet down the road before it abruptly vanished. This sudden termination of the scent trail introduced a chilling hypothesis into the official narrative. The abrupt end suggested she had likely entered another vehicle. Whether this entry was voluntary, perhaps hitching a ride to escape the cold and the arriving police, or coerced by an opportunistic predator, remained an agonizing unknown. Forensic analysis of the vehicle yielded no signs of a struggle, no blood, and no indication of foul play within the cabin itself. She had taken her backpack, her cellular phone, and the keys, leaving behind most of the alcohol and her textbooks. The emotional devastation inflicted upon the Murray family was immediate and profound. Fred Murray, her father, became a relentless advocate for his daughter, clashing frequently with law enforcement over the pace and direction of the search. He traversed the New Hampshire woods weekend after weekend, desperately seeking any shred of clothing or personal item. The agonizing limbo of an unsolved disappearance creates a unique psychological torture for loved ones, a phenomenon where grief cannot fully materialize because the finality of death remains unconfirmed. As weeks turned into months and months into years, the investigation transitioned into uncharted territory. This tragedy occurred at the precise dawn of the modern social media era, transforming it into what many consider the first definitive online cold case. Message boards, dedicated websites, and amateur sleuth forums exploded with speculation. The digital footprint she left behind, including the emails, the internet searches for Vermont accommodations found on her computer, and mysterious phone calls, provided endless fodder for crowdsourced investigation. This unprecedented digital attention proved to be a double-edged sword for official investigators. On one hand, the relentless online focus kept the missing woman's name in the public consciousness, generating thousands of tips over the decades. On the other hand, it birthed a labyrinth of misinformation, unfounded accusations against innocent bystanders, and wild conspiracy theories. Law enforcement agencies were forced to expend valuable resources chasing down digital rumors, highlighting the complex new reality of policing in the internet age. Amidst the noise, seasoned detectives continued to evaluate three primary theories, each grounded in circumstantial evidence. The term circumstantial evidence refers to proof of a fact or set of facts from which one could infer the fact in question rather than direct observation. The first theory posited that she succumbed to the elements. Supporters of this idea suggest she ran deep into the woods to hide from the police, became disoriented in the dark, and died of hypothermia, her remains hidden in an area outside the initial search grid. The second and perhaps most disturbing theory involves a crime of opportunity. Given the desolate nature of Route 112 and the precise timing of the scent trail ending, many investigators suspect she accepted a ride from a passing motorist who harbored malicious intent. The White Mountains region is vast and isolated, providing ample opportunity for a perpetrator to conceal a crime. Serial killers and violent offenders have historically used such remote corridors to target vulnerable individuals stranded by unfortunate circumstances. Evaluating the physical and digital evidence for a voluntary disappearance reveals a stark absence of proof over time. While the withdrawn funds and packed dorm room initially suggested a calculated exit strategy, the subsequent decades have produced zero digital footprint. As veteran investigators review the data, the lack of accessing Social Security numbers, banking activity, or renewing identification makes the logistical reality of completely erasing one's identity in the 21st century highly improbable. The theory of starting a new life has steadily lost traction among those closest to the official files. Periodic surges of hope have punctuated the long, agonizing timeline of this enduring mystery. Over the years, private investigators and dedicated volunteers have conducted targeted searches based on new tips or shifting geographical models. In 2019, a potential breakthrough emerged when ground-penetrating radar detected an anomaly beneath the basement floor of a nearby residential property. The discovery prompted a coordinated excavation by state authorities, drawing national media attention back to the quiet New Hampshire town. The excavation, however, yielded only fragments of pottery and old piping, offering no connection to the missing student. These devastating false dawns highlight the grueling reality of long-term investigations. Each promising lead that dissolves into dust forces the family and the investigators to reset their emotional equilibrium and begin the arduous process of searching all over again. The case files grow thicker, but the core mystery remains as impenetrable as the frozen woods on that February night. The legacy of this vanished young woman extends far beyond the geographical boundaries of Haverhill. Her story has become a cautionary tale and a catalyst for change in how missing adult cases are evaluated and prioritized. The initial assumption of a voluntary walk-off delayed critical search protocols, a systemic flaw that modern law enforcement agencies have actively worked to correct. Today, the disappearance of a young woman under such suspicious circumstances would trigger an immediate multi-agency response, reflecting lessons learned from past failures. Furthermore, the phenomenon surrounding her digital afterlife has reshaped the true crime landscape. It exposed the profound human desire to solve puzzles and bring order to chaos, while simultaneously revealing the toxic potential of unregulated online communities. The thousands of armchair detectives who continue to dissect every pixel of the available evidence represent a new kind of public participation in the justice system, a decentralized force that is both a powerful tool and a chaotic variable. Today, the New Hampshire Cold Case Unit maintains an active open file on the disappearance. Detectives periodically review the forensic data, hoping that advancements in technology or a sudden crisis of conscience from a witness will finally break the silence. The vehicle itself remains preserved in state custody, a silent witness holding on to secrets that forensic science has not yet been able to extract. The authorities continue to appeal to the public, knowing that the key to unlocking this puzzle likely resides in the memory of someone who has remained quiet for 2 decades. For the family, the passage of time does not diminish the pain, it only changes its texture. The empty chair at the holiday table, the uncelebrated birthdays, and the perpetual state of not knowing form a heavy burden carried through the years. They maintain a website, organize annual vigils at the crash site, and refuse to let the world forget the bright, ambitious nursing student who drove into the mountains and never returned. Their resilience is a testament to the enduring power of familial love in the face of unimaginable ambiguity. The physical location of the crash on Route 112 has transformed into a makeshift memorial. A blue ribbon, frequently replaced as the harsh New England weather frays its edges, marks the exact tree where the Saturn came to rest. It stands as a stark visual reminder of the specific geographical coordinate where a life trajectory was permanently suspended. Visitors occasionally leave flowers or small tokens, paying respects to a woman they never met but whose story has deeply impacted their own lives. As we analyze the established facts, the void at the center of the narrative remains profound. How can a brief window of 7 minutes swallow a human being so completely? The intersection of preparation, opportunity, and tragedy in this case creates a puzzle with missing pieces that may never be found. It forces us to confront the unsettling reality that despite our interconnected world and advanced forensic capabilities, a person can still simply vanish into the dark. The disappearance of Maura Murray stands as one of the most perplexing and heavily scrutinized cold cases of the 21st century. The silent woods of New Hampshire guard their secrets closely, indifferent to the decades of searching, the digital speculation, and the enduring heartbreak. Until new evidence emerges from the shadows, or a confession breaks the long silence, the frozen stretch of Route 112 will remain a haunting monument to an unsolved mystery, forever waiting for an answer that has yet to come.